Hello and welcome back. Originally I'd planned on making one long Dofus tutorial guide showing you all the things that you need to know to get started. However, after I got done recording all my footage and had about 3 hours, I realized, nope, even with editing that's still going to be a crazy long video. So I decided to deliver this in smaller bite-sized friendly videos. In the last video I covered how to pick a server and a class, and I even walked you through the tutorial. So in this video I'm going to teach you how to read and understand the spells of your character. I'm also going to go over the characteristic points, and for us super nerds I'm going to go over all the advanced characteristic points. That way you know exactly how to customize your character for its biggest blasting potential. Welcome to Benjamight Gaming, where it's my goal to bring you fun and fantastic Dofus PVM content. Alright, moving on. There's a lot to cover. I hope you're still with me and hope everything's working out and making sense for you so far. The next thing I gotta go over are spells. Spells and characteristics play together and they're a very big part of this game. But I feel like spells need to go over first because then you'll understand the characteristic side of things a little bit better. So if you come down and you see this little wand right here, or you can push S on the keyboard, you're gonna bring up the list of spells that your class can have. If it's lit up, that means it's a spell that you have active. If it's grayed out, it means you don't have access to that spell yet. You'll see a little black number. That's the level you need to be in order to use that spell. Also, you're going to see two sides. You got a left column and a right column. These are alternative spells that you can use once you start to reach those. Basically, you're going to go all the way down the left side, unlocking all these spells, and then it starts over and it starts going down the right side. The max level that you get to in this game is level 200, and then you go into something called Omegas, which are levels beyond that. You don't unlock new spells or anything, and you don't necessarily get stronger. It's just a way to show that you've continued to level beyond the level of 200. This second column begins to open up at level 95. These are not necessarily just different versions of the spell on the left-hand side. It just becomes the alternate spell that you can choose from. If you were a strength-based character and you didn't want this spell because you don't use the air abilities, which I'm going to go over here in just a second, you could select this instead. Basically, you get to choose left side or right side turned on anytime, and then that will change the icons down here in your spell bar. The color of the picture or the icon is what will distinguish what element that spell cast in. So for example, the green here is an air attack, which is also combined with the character stat of agility. In fact, let me bring this up. So over here is agility. Anytime you use this attack, it's going to be using the number in this column to determine how strong that's going to be. Red is the fire or the intelligence stat. Blue is the water or the chance stat. And you can see the symbol is right next to the word there to help you remember which connects to which. And then the brown right here is earth-based attacks or the strength column. There's also neutral, which is a grayed out color like this one right here. It says 10 to 11 in neutral damage. The characteristic that applies to this is also the strength or the brown colored one, but it hits in a different element. Something can be weak to strength and not weak to neutral, or vice versa. So there are two different aspects, even though both are affected by the strength characteristic. I hope that makes sense. You'll also notice some yellows and purple colors. These are basically going to be all the miscellaneous ones that are not specific to a characteristic. These could be buffs or debuffs, meaning it makes you stronger, or it might make the enemies weaker. It could be something that attacks in multiple elements like fire and agility at the same time, or perhaps even poisons, which are going to be something that affect a character over time. Those are going to be all lumped into that category of yellows or purples. Also, the last thing is if you come across a summon type class, the color of that summon typically will also relate to the element that attacks in. So if you have a green summon symbol, that means that that summon is typically going to be attacking in an air-based element. So I'm going to go over just a couple of these spells to give you a general idea of how to read these and how to look at them as you continue, because there are a lot here. And Ankama has done a fantastic job of kind of releasing these in an order that help you understand what your character can do as you grow. One thing that's also really cool is even this spell that you get at the very beginning is a spell you will still be using at level 200 because everything serves a very unique purpose to your character and you just learn to use it the way that you want to. I'm going to go down this column from the top all the way down and I'm going to explain each one of these so that you know what you're looking at when you look at your spells. So the very first thing is your cost. That's going to be how many action points it takes. This one takes 3. This one takes 3, 3, 3. That one takes 4. So if you only have 6 AP, that means you can only cast this once and then you have 2 AP left. Well, none of your other spells cost 2 AP. So that means you're going to be wasting 2 AP that turn. So you got to think about that. Now you will earn gear and things as you progress and level that will increase the amount of action points that you have and move points that you have as you progress through the game. So then you could use Burning Arrow and Magic Arrow on the same turn because you have 7 now instead of 6. The next thing on that list is range. This one has a 1 to 8 range. That's how many squares away from you that it can attack. Now, if it said 3 to 8, that means those first 2 squares in front of you in every direction, you will not be able to cast it in. For example, if we look down here at Atonement, that says 6 to 10. This is not a spell that you could cast on an enemy if they're right next to you. So that's something you got to consider also. If all of your spells can only be cast from a distance and you don't have anything to defend yourself right next to you, you could be in a really bad situation. The range 1 to 8 means that's the number of spaces that it covers. The parentheses there that says modifiable, there are equipment and things and buffs that you can get where it will increase the range of your character. That means that number will get added to whatever the base number is here. For example, this spell right here, it says down there at the bottom, it says 2 range for 1 turn after you hit an enemy. This goes from 1 to 8 to 1 to 10 for that 1 turn. If it's not modifiable, then it just won't say that on there. And those can be just as handy also because there's enemies out there that will steal range from you. Well, if your spell is modifiable, that means this could go from a 1 to 8 down to a 1 to 2, which really decreases your chance of hitting. But if your spell is not range modifiable and they steal range from you, it doesn't matter. It won't affect the range of that spell. So there's pros and cons to both. The next thing there is the critical hit, 15%. That means this spell has a 15% chance of critical hitting. And that's that bigger number that I was showing you in the tutorial where you got a normal base damage or you can do a critical hit, which is a buffed hit. Class spell is a Craw. That's pretty self-explanatory. Number of casts per turn per target. So this says that you can cast it twice per turn on a target. But if you look 2 down from there, it says uses per turn. That means you can cast it 3 times in a turn. So if you had 9 AP, you could cast it 3 times. But what that number of casts per target means, only 2 of those can be on the same target. The 3rd cast would have to be on a different target. Right below that, maximum accumulative effect, that's the range stealing that we got going on there. It's saying that that will only affect once. So that means even if you shot 3 different enemies, you still only get 2 range for 1 turn. It's not like you can shoot 3 different enemies and have 6 range for that turn. That's what that's explaining there. Right below the uses per turn is where you're going to get a description, a written description of what the spell can do, which is going to detail what it does. The effects are going to be what happens with that spell. So this has a base damage of 11 to 13 and it hits in the air element. The steal 2 range lasts for 1 turn. That means you took 2 range from the enemy. If they had a modifiable attack, that means their range went from 1 to 5 down to 1 to 3. So that can be handy. And you got a 2 range buff. The critical effects means that if you do this attack and it is a critical hit, see how it now does a 13 to 15 damage. This spell here, a lot of the stuff very similar. You can only use it once per target, but this has a 25% chance of a critical hit and the damage is higher. But it can only be cast in a straight line. See that line right there? It says cast in straight line only. Disbursement arrow. This is not something that's going to hurt anybody, but it pushes the enemies around. And the frozen arrow, this inflicts fire damage. It's only got a 5% chance of critical hit. So this is not a spell that you would be trying to use if you're hoping for a really strong hit. See, it's 10 to 12, but if you're hoping for that 12 to 14, your chances are pretty slim with this one. There are attributes and equipment and buffs and things that you can get later. In fact, I think the Craw even has one right here. Critical shooting. If you cast this, which is a buff, you can put it on yourself. It increases your chance of a critical hit by 10%. This one would go from 25% to 35% while that buff is on you. I'm not going to go over any more of these. I think that at least gives you enough of a breakdown to figure out. You'll find spells that can only attack diagonally. You'll find spells that you cast and you flip over on the other side of another character. You might even see some that say that there's no line of sight required. Plaguing Arrow right here. Down there right underneath cross spell, it says does not require line of sight. So remember when I was showing you, you can't attack behind the enemy because you can't see those? This spell can do it. You can shoot through objects and around objects. It doesn't matter. You don't need line of sight for this. So there's a whole bunch of spells and you're going to have a hard time picking which ones you want to stick with just because they're all so fun. Hopefully that gives you a good rundown on the spells. If there's a particular thing you run across and you are not understanding it, leave it in the comments below and I will do my best to get back with you as quickly as possible. But I got a feeling you'll figure that stuff out pretty easily just going off of what I've shown you right there. Now let's cover the characteristics and how they affect all these spells that you have available. All right, characteristics, another very important aspect of this game. If you go down here and click on the little DNA or push the C on your keyboard, you're going to bring up the characteristics, which I brought up a moment ago as we were going over the spells. I'm going to cover the summary page, which is the very general breakdown of your characteristics. If what you want to learn is more about the advanced stats, jump to this location in the video where I'm going to go over that section of your characteristics. It can look scary at first, but it's easy to understand. It's going to give you more detail than what this does, but I need to go over the basics first, which is what this section is dedicated to. All right, so those of you needing to know the summary, we're just going to start at the top and we're going to go down. I'm going to explain each one of these. You got your character name right up here. I'm new. Like what I did there? Your character level right here, we are level 3. This is the achievement points that you've unlocked. Remember in the tutorial I brought up this little prize thing over here? Again, we're going to go over that here very soon in one of the next sections, but that's what that is showing you is the number of achievement points you've collected so far. Your experience meter, this is showing you how far until your next level. It's basically this same thing that's right down here. This bar and this bar are the exact same thing. This is just showing it to you on your character page. Your energy level, this 10,000 out of 10,000. Every time you're in a battle and you die, you're going to lose a chunk of this energy. Now, when you log off, your character will slowly get energy back. The only way this becomes an issue is if you die multiple times in a row or too frequently. If this gets all the way to empty, your character will turn into a ghost and you will have to go try to find a phoenix. But the goal is don't let this get all the way down. There's breads and things that you can eat to consume that will fill this back up. But most of the time, especially for a very long while, as long as you're not just dying back to back to back to back to back, this is going to stay full just fine and you don't have to worry about it. Health points. This is the health of your character. That's what you're seeing here in the heart, where you're full health at the moment, 76 out of 76. After a fight ends, this slowly refills. Now in these low levels, it refills fairly quickly, but in higher levels, once you've got 1,000 health points, if you get all the way down to 100, you're not going to want to sit there and wait for that to fill back up. So again, there's breads and things that you can eat, and you'll learn about that as you progress through the game that will fill that up faster so that you're not sitting there just waiting for your health to fill back up. Action points we've already covered. MP points we already covered. That's your attack points or the things that you use per turn. Your move points is how far you can move per turn. Also, there is a max number. As you continue to progress in this game, you're going to get the ability to add to these. The maximum number of AP your character can have is 12, and the maximum number of MP your character can have is 6. Now that's base stats. That means that's stuff that you've just got. As soon as you go into a fight, these are the numbers you start with. If you have 12 AP and 6 MP and you start a fight and then somebody casts an AP buff on you to where you're supposed to get 2 more, you'll go up to 14. Once you're in the fight, you can have over that number. It's just as your base value, the highest you can have is 12 and 6. Vitality is your health. Again, every time you level, you get 5 more points. Agility is going to affect your air damage. That's the green ones. But every one of these characteristics have a secondary effect. So for example, on agility, it says right here, it says, it also increases your dodge and your lock. Now that's an advanced stat attribute, which I'll be going over in the next section. So I'm going to just kind of blow past it here, but that's the attribute that agility affects as you continue to pump points in here, other than just your spell damage. Chance is what affects your water damage, but it also increases your prospecting. That's your chance of dropping items. The higher your prospecting, the better your odds of dropping resources or equipment or rare things from monsters that you fight. Strength is what affects your earth and neutral damage, and it also increases the number of pods that you can carry. 1 strength point increases your ability to carry 5 more pods. That means if you put 100 points into your strength, you can carry an extra 500 pods worth of weight on your character. Intelligence is for your fire damage, and the secondary effect on this is it increases your heals. So if you are an Inirupsa or an Osamoda or a Sadida, one of these classes that have quite a few healing abilities, intelligence is what will also buff up how much healing you can do with that class. So wisdom affects the ability for your character to level faster. It increases the amount of XP you get per fight. The more wisdom that you have on your character, the more XP. For example, this guy right here, I'm going to get 34 XP. Well, if I had pumped points into wisdom, maybe I get 35 or 36 XP instead from that fight, versus somebody has 0 wisdom. Now the tricky thing is the wisdom is an expensive attribute, and I'll go over that here in a second when I start to talk about this points to distribute. The other thing it affects is your ability to remove AP and MP from enemies or resist losing AP and MP to enemies. So they might cast a spell to try to steal 2 AP from you. Well, the higher your wisdom, the greater your chance is that you will dodge that effect. They'll still hit you, so it might still do damage, but it may not steal the AP that it was trying to. Now, the last thing we're going to go over right here is the points to distribute. Remember when I leveled, you saw that I got 5 health points, 5 pods, and then also 5 characteristic points. That's what these are right here. See, I've gone up 2 levels, which is why I have 10 points. These are the points that I can pump into any of these categories. Now, right now, we have 16 in our vitality, and this is coming from our equipment. I'm going to go over inventory in greater detail here very soon, but these are the pieces of equipment that we got while going through the tutorial. This hat has 1 vitality. See how I'm at 16 over here at the moment? If I put this on, you're like, whoa, I went up 2 points. That says I got 1 point. Math isn't working. Game's broke. It's bugged. No, don't worry. It's not that. These are all part of a set. If we right click on one of these, see how there's a little set right here. If I click that, this is the full setup here. And if I'm only wearing, say, 4 pieces of this set, I get a set bonus of 4 initiative and 4 vitality. Now, what I had a moment ago was 7 items. So I get the stats of the equipment, and then I get an extra 7 initiative and 7 vitality. Well, when I put on the hat, which has 1 vitality, and I moved up to the 8 bonus, it gave me an extra vitality. So I got 2 vitality, 1 from the hat, 1 from the set. That's why I have 18 over here now instead of 16. All right, so the points to distribute are points that I get to pick where it's going to go. Now, this is why I showed you the spells side of things first, because you want to figure out, okay, what element is it that I'm going to be hitting in? So if you bring up your spells, you can click this spell button right here, and you're looking at these and you're like, okay, well, it would be kind of stupid for me to go with a strength character because I have no spells that can hit in the strength, and I don't have any for quite a while. But your better odds are probably going with either agility because you have 2 spells, or the fire element because you have 1 and you're almost going to get a second one. So this is where you can decide, okay, which way do I want to go? Now, you don't have to be too worried about, well, I don't know, maybe I like these ones more. That's okay. You can switch as often as you want to. So let's just pick agility. If we come over here to the agility column, we can click this plus, and it brings this up, and it's showing you this is going to increase your air damage, lock, dodge, and initiative. So 1 point equals 1 agility. We have 10 to work with. So I can click 1, 2, 3. Now, if I wanted to, I could stop right there. Agility is now 3 points stronger, and I still have 7 I could put. So I could put 1 here, 2 here, 1 up here if I wanted to do that. Remember how I told you that wisdom was an expensive one? All of these start out as 1 point equals 1 point. Wisdom, however, starts out as 3 points equals 1 point. I could only raise this 2 times with the points that I got left. And personally, you probably want to be doing more damage to increase your chance of staying alive than to be trying to get a little bit more XP. These other characteristics, agility, chance, strength, and intelligence, these things stay 1 point to 1 point until you reach 100 points. Then it goes 2 points for 1 point until you reach 200 points. Then 3 points to 1 point until you reach 300 points. And then you guessed it, 4 points for 1 point after that. Now there is a max number of points that you'll get, because remember, you can only get up to level 200. Typically what you want to do is you want to focus all of your points into a single element, also maybe into vitality. So let's go ahead and say I pump all these into agility, because that's going to be my primary element. I got all 10 points into agility. Okay, so let's say I've reached level 6 now and I have burning arrow, and I'm like, man, I'd really like to see what kind of damage this can do. Here's where I said not to worry about it. You have this reset characteristics point right here. You just click the arrow, you click OK. All the points you pumped into the character stats go back down here. So if you'd already gone up several more levels, all of those would go back here too, and you can put them into whatever category you want. So that's pretty much how the basics of the characteristics work. You don't need to know the advanced stats to get started. You could go out there and have a great time. All right, mega nerds. Now, if you're a beginner to this game and you already want to know about the advanced stats, you're my kind of people. I'm all about this. So I'm going to go over the advanced stats now in a very brief but descriptive detail. There's a lot to cover here, and some of this you'll figure out as you move further in the game, but at least you'll know what you're looking at this point. If you didn't spot it earlier, you get to the different sections by just clicking the tabs here at the top, summary and then advanced. Your primary characteristics are going to be what you just saw over here, which are the vitality through the wisdom. You're going to see those listed right here. You got your AP and MP. This is where you can see how many extra range you have on your character. The max range that you can have added to your character as a base stat is 6. And what that means is, for example, on this spell, when it has a range of 1 to 8, say you got 4 different pieces of equipment, every one of them have a plus range, that means you have 4 extra range as soon as you start. So that means you go into a fight, this spell starts out at 1 to 12 before you've done anything else. The power one right here, this is basically a number that applies to all of the elements: agility, chance, strength, and intelligence. Right now I have 10 intelligence. If I had equipment that put on, for example, the ring that we have right now, this right here, has plus 4 power. If I put that on, you will see that this number is now 4. What this means is I have 4 agility, 4 chance, 4 strength, and 4 intelligence. So this gets added to whatever number you have here. So since I have 10 intelligence plus 4 power, my intelligence attacks with 14 instead of 10. I know what you're thinking. Well, if the power is so powerful, why wouldn't you just want all power stats instead of these different attributes? Why wouldn't you just focus on trying to get equipment that has all of this? Well, the secondary effects of these things, the critical hits, the prospecting, the pods, the healing abilities that you get out of these right here, this doesn't carry that attribute to it. So if you've got 500 right here, your intelligence healing abilities do not go up in corresponding to where if you had 500 intelligence, your healing abilities would get that buff as well. Also, when you have weapons later, they might require you to have at least 100 intelligence and 100 strength in order to use it. Well, this number doesn't help you with that either. So that's the give and the take with the power. The give is it applies to all the elements. The take is it doesn't actually help with the secondary effects, and it doesn't help you reach attribute requirements for particular weapons. The critical hit section right here, this is what will raise your chance of a critical attack. So this magic arrow has a 15% critical attack right now. So by stacking on a bunch of critical hits, I increase my chance of critical damage. Wisdom we covered in the last one. But remember, I said that the wisdom affects your chance to be able to steal AP or resist AP being taken from you. Same with the MP. Well, that's what these points are right here. I think it is every 10 wisdom points you get, these go up by 1. So if you had 100 wisdom, you would have a 10 AP reduction, which means your ability to steal or reduce the AP of an enemy, or AP parry, which means your ability to dodge someone stealing it from you. You'll get equipment later that gives you a bunch of wisdom. You'll also find equipment that have straight up MP reduction buffs or MP parry buffs. Those are things that get added to these attributes right here. Heals. This is where your heals will go up based upon your intelligence attribute, or if you have equipment with plus heals on it, that's what this number is. Your dodge and your lock, same thing. Your lock is your ability to hold a person next to you so that they can't walk away. Your dodge is your ability to be able to walk away from a person without being held. The bigger your number than theirs, the better is what that comes down to. This is where agility characters really shine, because every 10 agility you get, you go up in both of those numbers. Initiative is where I covered real briefly. This is your chance to go first in a fight. The person with the highest initiative goes first, and then second, third, fourth, and fifth. But initiative is what establishes the initial order. Summons. This is the number that allows you to have more than one summon out on a map. Everybody can have one, but if you are a Osamoda and you want to have lots of summons on the map, you need a bigger number here. So you want to try to have equipment that allows you to have 3 or 4 so that you can have multiple summons out there working on your behalf. Here's the prospecting number I was talking about, and this is what determines your chance of dropping resources. And every time you increase your chance by 10, this prospecting number goes up by 1 as well. Also, you're going to find equipment things later that increase prospecting. They might have 20 or 30 prospecting just added on it. That number just gets applied straight here. Now, these next two sections, damages and the percent resistances, I'm going to lump these together because it all pretty much functions the same way, and you'll understand what I mean by that here in just a second. So the damage is a number that's going to get added on top of whatever you hit with. So let's say this magic arrow was going to hit by 20. Well, if I have 5 damage right here, that means that I could hit by 20, and then 5 is going to get added straight on to whatever number I hit on. So in this case, if I was going to hit by a 20, 5 gets added to that. That means I'm going to hit by 25. You could have, say, 100 straight damage. Well, that means if you were going to hit by a 20 and you've got 100 damage here, you're going to hit by 120 instead of just 20. Critical damage works the same way, but it only applies to critical hits. The neutral, earth, fire, water, and air, again, same concept, but then it only applies to that element. So let's say instead of 100 damage here, let's say you had 50 damage and then you had 50 air damage. You're going to hit by 100 if you use an air attack. If you used a fire attack, only the 50 from the damage buff, this one right here, would apply, because the air buff would only apply to air attacks. Again, weapons, same thing. Traps, same thing. It's damage that's only going to apply to that attribute or that type of spell. Melee range and distance range, that means if it's a distance attack, if you have a buff on here, that means if you're standing next to an enemy and you use a attack, this wouldn't count because you have to be at a distance. So that's how that works. All the damage stuff works pretty simple. Same concept with the resistances. There's 2 types of resistances. You have a fixed, which is kind of like the damage. It's just a number that's going to be taken off. So if somebody was going to hit you by 100 neutral damage, let's say that you have a 50 fixed damage resistance, that means it's going to take off 50 right out of the gate. So instead of being hit by 100, you're going to be hit by 50. The percent works the same way, but it's based upon a percentage. So if you have a 10% reduction and somebody's going to hit you by 100, well, 10% of that means 10. So that means you're going to get hit by 90 instead of 100. That's what these are for. So your character can build up earth resistance and fire resistance, but then maybe you're weak to water. So if you come against an enemy that attacks in water, you're going to take a lot more damage than if they hit you in earth and fire. So that's basically how those work. Same with weapons, distance, and all that. So that is the advanced. Again, I said it looked kind of scary, but now that you're looking at it, and I've kind of broke it down, hopefully it's not as intimidating. You'll find equipment that have attributes that now you'll know what it's talking about when you look at that. All right, that's it for this guide. Now in my next guide, I'm going to teach you how to look at and understand your inventory page. I'm also going to go over achievements and prizes, and if it's not too long, I'm also going to include all about questing in that guide. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you're alerted as soon as that video goes live. And if you could do me one huge favor and smack that like button, it helps YouTube promote my channel and let people know that I'm here. Well, that's everything I got. Be safe out there, and I'll see you on the next one.